Now, if I give you a long article to read and also give you the option of someone reading it loud to you, what would you choose? In most cases, people would choose the latter. Podcast might be a new term in India, but it is not too different from listening to your stories from your grandparents. India has seen increasing popularity of podcasts, perhaps the appeal being that in today's hustle culture, people like options that allow them to do multiple things at once. Podcasts provide an attractive solution to people's multitasking needs, unlike video formats which require undivided attention. The podcast industry in India has reported a significant growth in listenership over the years. As per a 2020 report, with over 57.6 million listeners, India has emerged as the third largest podcast listening market after China and the US. Increasing podcast culture in India. Why are people choosing podcasts? Now, you might have heard these days that listening is the new reading. There are a few reasons for such a rapid increase in the consumption of podcasts, especially among the millennials and the Gen Z. Intimate and non-intrusive. Storytelling is something that is rooted in our culture. Audiovisual content like a web series or a movie also tells stories, but podcasts are more intimate. It feels like you are literally sitting next to the podcaster. This experience of companionship is very powerful. India's familiarity with radio is another reason for its people jumping on the podcast bandwagon. Unlike television and other screens which require singular attention, radio seldom stops household routines. Much like radio, podcasts too can be in the background. Plethora of genres. Podcast growth in the country can be attributed in part to the fact that younger generations are increasingly tuning to them for entertainment, self-improvement, and awareness. The list of genres that podcasts have to offer is endless. There is everything for everyone, right from fiction to non-fiction. Mythology is another genre that has always been popular in India. Heirs of the Pandavas, a spin-off series on the Mahabharata, got over 100,000 streams for their first 10 episodes. It is available on multiple platforms for you to check out. Speaking many languages. When IVM began in 2015, most of the Indian podcasts were in English. But this trend is fast changing. All major hosting platforms are focusing on regional languages because of the availability of more and more local content across languages. Podcasts have started to penetrate even in the small towns of the country. Here are a few podcasts that you can check out if you are just starting out. The Musafir Stories, an Indian travel podcast available across all major platforms. The Ranveer Show, a Spotify exclusive hosted by Ranveer Alabadia. His podcast touches on topics like lifestyle, health, fitness, career guidance, and motivation. FinShots Daily. It is a 5-minute daily podcast explaining the most important finance and business developments in plain and simple English with a focus on India. Available across all major platforms. On Purpose with Jay Shetty, a self-help podcast hosted by British Indian author himself. Again, available across platforms. The MythPat podcast, created and hosted by Mithilesh Patankar in a weekly episodes, he entertains and educates his listeners through interviews with top gamers and influencers. He also shares tips on how to be a successful creator, available on Spotify. Reports show that India will witness an increase of 30.4% compound annual growth rate in its monthly podcast listener base over the next 5 years. So, this boom in podcasts is perhaps just the beginning.